This is Weights and Wealth, your one-stop shop for entertaining education on building a stronger body and bank account.
We are not doctors or financial advisors and must warn you this is not medical or investing advice. It is for your entertainment.
Welcome back to another episode of Weights and Wealth. We are so glad that you decided to join us on your car ride or whatever you are doing while you listen to us. Our shout out of the day goes to Carter. Carter from Columbus, Georgia, and that's for telling his friends about us and promoting us on Instagram. Carter even may be on the show soon, so we'll keep you updated on that. That would be for Airbnb arbitrage and his experience with running a business with that. So thank you, Carter, for sharing the show. Mm-hmm. And also stay tuned till the end of the episode for the May Starbucks gift card raffle winner and the book club, of course.
Mm-hmm. This week's wealth wisdom of the week is that every time you buy something, you're voting with your dollars. And something that's great about our economic system is we don't just get to vote at the ballot. We get to vote every day when we spend our money. So if there's a company that you either really like or really don't like, you can choose to spend your money there or not.
How do you vote with your dollars the most, Nick?
You mean in terms of like companies I support or companies I don't support? So I would say if there's a company or I guess like a small time person that I really like I want to support them.
Yeah, I know when it comes to any sort of like cosmetic or cleaning stuff, you're always supporting like really small companies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then for larger companies, I don't like buying stuff from Amazon, nor do I like buying stuff from Disney. Like I don't have an ESPN or a Disney Plus subscription. Mm-hmm. So I guess those are just a couple situations. I can't think of any smaller time people that I consistently support, but when I get the opportunity to, I do.
Yeah. You've also stopped buying Bud Light recently.
I have stopped buying Bud Light. We'll see how long that goes on for. I know because Anheuser-Busch makes Busch Light as well, which is my go-to. So I won't. And Anheuser-Busch, they pretty much have they have a big market share. I did buy some Molson Coors stock. I told you about it. I actually bought it on Easter. Yeah. And I'm switching my money over to a high yield savings account. So I just sold everything, but I was up 14% on it or something like that.
Oh, wow.
So
just because of the backlash to Anheuser-Busch?
Yeah. Yeah. And that was in a matter of a couple weeks.
Damn.
So that was pretty cool. I mean, I put $200 in it. So I made $30, but still.
Should we move on to the intro article you've got for us here?
Yeah. So this was really just to kind of get our talk started. It's that a university's workers will strike for the first time in New Jersey, which that's kind of wild. In New Jersey, it's the first time Rutgers has gone on strike. This is one of the things that I kind of like about unions is that they bring pay up. They definitely have their drawbacks, though. I think the biggest one is that it stifles innovation. And we saw that with Kodak. That's why Kodak went under, pretty much because they wouldn't adapt to the digital camera. They just wanted to use the old camera. And that's because they had a union, and the guys in the union didn't want to learn a new technique or have to learn something new because they were worried about automation and losing their job.
I feel like that also has to be on, in that case, on management level for not coming out with new products. They could have, Kodak had the digital camera before anyone else did, and they didn't sell it because they didn't want to lose their sales for film, which is, it's kind of crazy to think about. They had this new technology first and just didn't sell it because they didn't want to lose their biggest source of revenue. Yeah.
And it was your brother telling me about it. And he was saying that the trade union kind of had so much pull that they could just tell management, no, we're not doing that. So that's one of the issues with unions. And I don't know if Blockbuster had a union, but they could have adjusted to and became Netflix. They already had the brand name.
I think another thing with unions that people saw during COVID is the teachers' unions have a lot of pull with what happens in schools. And during COVID, people were seeing that like it was completely safe for kids to be in school, but a lot of the teachers' unions didn't want to go and be in the schools teaching, which I think surprised a lot of people. But I guess we'll get into that more in our education part one. We're really excited about some education episodes coming up. We've got a 5 or a 6 part series on education coming out. So
yeah. So at least my opinion is that unions just have too much power. Really, I think raising pay is a good thing, and I don't believe that violates the free market. I mean, people getting together, like as long as there's not an artificial like hand in it, I think that's free market.
Yeah, as long as the government isn't involved. And I think like if you're an employer, if you don't want your employees to form a union, you just have to treat them better so that they don't feel like they need to form a union to demand things from you, right?
Exactly.
So if you're treating your employees well enough, and like, I mean, think about like Chick-fil-A. I don't think Chick-fil-A has a union because their workers generally like working there, right?
Yeah.
So if you're doing well, competing with other companies through what you're giving your employees, they probably won't form a union.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
And then I don't think Weights and Wealth will ever allow its employees to form a union. I think we'll fire them.
Well, we need employees first.
We have one. We contract work out to Maddie, so we've got one employee technically.
Yep. Do you want to move on to today's topic?
Sure.
Do you have a longer? So this country. This episode is based around a JFK quote. A country is as strong as its citizens. Is there any other part? I don't know that quote.
No, that's the quote. It? And okay. Right now, America's citizens are pretty weak, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we'll go through financially how we're weak, and also weights-wise or physically how we're weak.
Yeah. So the one thing that really comes to mind is the national debt. National debt is a lot different than personal debt, and you really get deep into macroeconomics when you're talking about national debt, just because a country can defend itself, whereas I can't really defend myself from a bank. Like, and what's a country? How can a country claim its debt other than invading another country? Like, there's really no way to do it. I mean, through diplomacy, but yeah,
it's hard for China to just get money back from us that we owe them. You know, like we owe them a lot of money, but like get it, to force us to give it back to them, they'd have to either get clever with like some trade restrictions or like go to war with us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and like they can't just show up and repossess land, and like the U.S. will just be like, okay, sure, yeah, we owe you.
The other thing with the debt, what is it right now? Is it 23 trillion?
So 32 trillion. Our GDP is 23 trillion.
Okay, so it's higher than our GDP, and then also America's population is like 330 million. So I think the last time I looked at the numbers, the debt is up to like $95,000 per citizen. And then if you look at taxpayers per tax-paying citizen, the debt is like
at least double that.
It's almost 300,000. It's like, I think it's like 280,000.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, how are we going to pay that off? Like, that's so much money. You can't even collect taxes to cover that.
Right, and I don't think we ever will pay it off. Like, countries will always carry debt. It's hard to say without having a doctorate exactly how that affects us as citizens. But I do have. Do you want to guess the U.S.'s debt to GDP ratio, where it ranks in terms of the world?
We're probably not the worst. We somewhere in the middle.
We're 12. So also, at least for personal debt, people who have more money tend to have a higher ratio of debt to income.
Okay.
Just because they can carry it and they're more, I guess, good for it. Do you want to guess the top couple? Think high inflation.
Think high inflation.
Because
All right.
yeah,
So
you got to borrow.
we've got like Venezuela probably.
Yep, that's in the top 4. I think it's number 1. Yeah, number 1.
All right.
Greece, and then Japan.
Okay.
Both those are up there.
Is that one of our phones?
No, I think that's Katie's.
We are recording this in the morning.
Yes,
It's how we do it.
it's like 6:30 right now.
Something else with the national debt that people might not know is when you look at the Fed and interest rates, if the Fed is increasing the interest rate, that actually affects how fast our national debt climbs. Mm-hmm. And then we have to service those interest payments, right? Mm-hmm. So when the Fed increases the interest rate, it makes it harder for the U.S. to like meet its budget, right? So in the recent years, like the past 10, 12 years.
I got to get that.
All right, we'll pause. And we're back. So yeah, I was talking about how the interest rate, the Fed funds interest rate impacts the national debt. And so with the like ZIRP policy, zero interest rate policy, of having interest rates super low, making it really easy to borrow money, that made it so that it was easier for the government to service the interest payments. And now that the interest rate is increasing back to a more normal interest rate, historically speaking, it's getting really hard to make those payments because the debt's just been increasing throughout the ZIRP policy span. So,
and yeah, like recently, I-bonds got super popular about a year ago just because they were paying 7.6%. So that's all money that the government has to pay out. Now, a lot of our country's debt holders are its citizens. I'm pretty sure it's over 50% are citizens. So it's not like it's all going to other countries, which is a good thing in my opinion. So,
yeah.
And you mentioned that that our national debt's about 94,000. You said
Per person, yeah.
Per person. So the average consumer debt is about 96.
Oh gosh.
So
Okay.
it's like right there. Consumer debt is just about everything but a mortgage.
Okay. So credit cards, is that car payments?
Car loan.
Okay. What else? Just
Personal loans, home equity line is in there.
Okay.
So that can be more of a mortgage if you're using it to improve your house. Fun fact, you can also deduct your mortgage interest on a HELOC if you are using it for home improvements.
Oh, interesting.
So that would be on your Schedule A.
The tax man.
And funny enough, I got that 96K statistic from First Republic Bank.
Okay.
which has had some issues recently. But here's kind of a breakout of all the debt. Mortgage debt's $220,000. HELOC average just under $40,000. Same with student loan debt, just under $40,000. Auto loan right around $20,000. Credit card around $5,000. Personal loan $17,000 and total $96,000.
Did you say credit card was only $5,000 on average? I would have thought it was a lot higher.
I mean, I don't think like not too many people carry a large balance on that. I kind of feel like the ones that are making it that high have a lot more than 5,000 versus zero. I also don't know if that includes people that just like pay it off every month, because I always have a balance of like $2,000 or so at least on my credit card.
No, I would expect that statistic would have to be like people that are 60 days delinquent on the payment. That's when it starts impacting your credit score.
Yeah.
And that's when it's reported. So I would assume that, yeah.
Yeah. And good cash management, if you're into that, is to carry a balance on your credit card and just have auto pay set up so it pays it off in full every month. Because say you always have an outstanding balance of $2,000, that's an additional $2,000 that you can have in the stock market your entire life. So that's compounding your entire life.
Okay.
And it's an interest-free loan essentially.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And even though it's only $2,000, that with that compounding over 40 years, that makes a big difference.
Yeah, definitely.
And then we have the waning value of the dollar as reserve currency. And this isn't to be confused with the strength of the US dollar, because the US dollar has been doing pretty well compared to other currencies. Because we gave out a lot of money during COVID, but so did most other countries. And relatively, we've been doing better than others. And then we also got the increased prices relative to income since we left the gold standard. So I don't really think they've gone up that much.
I mean, there are I guess it depends on what you look at, right? Because like home prices have increased dramatically. Education has increased dramatically. So it just depends on like what you're talking about buying.
Yeah, I have like the CPI, which takes into account a bunch of different factors and weights them based on how much people use certain products. But inflation, it's also on a logarithmic scale, right? Because it compounds. So it's going to always look very, very exaggerated. Like any time period, it's going to look like it goes way up at the end.
Okay.
Just because, when it's $1 and 2% on a dollar, it's $1, 2 cents. But once you're at 100, you're adding $2 to the value. So that's just about all I have for wealth.
All right. On the weights side, we've mentioned before, I think it was our very first episode that we brought out this statistic, but like 65 to 70% of the average American's diet is made out of processed foods. And I mean, processed foods aren't going to kill you immediately, but if that's all you're eating, you're probably going to have an excess of calories, and you're going to be probably deficient in protein and micronutrients. So if you can eat less processed foods, that's probably going to be better for you. So I just wrote down that most people are eating garbage, and then some people will say that there's no foods that are bad for you because they don't want to label foods as good foods and bad foods because that's not good for people's mental health. But if you've ever seen like blue maple syrup that's actually just like high fructose corn syrup and additives, like that's a bad food.
Yeah, like
this is
like
not do your body any good.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, but if it's like dyed blue for like different
to be like blueberry flavored.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, that's not good for you.
Yeah.
In no way is that a good food to put in your body.
Right. Yeah. And real maple syrup is expensive.
Yeah.
It's like $20-something compared to $2.
Yeah, but a lot of maple syrup at the store is just labeled maple syrup. And you don't know that it's high fructose corn syrup.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of food out there that is completely just garbage for your body and is not good for your gut. And we've talked a lot on the show about how your gut health is so important to your body's immune system and your overall health.
Yeah, and another thing, I know somebody who just found out that he has like high blood pressure, so he's trying to cut out sodium, and he was telling me that the first thing that they're doing is just not adding salt to foods. And I was like, you really should look at any processed food that you eat because processed foods have a ton of sodium.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're eating mostly a whole food diet, you can easily lack sodium. Like I add a lot of salt to my food and I put it in my water too as well.
Yeah. If you're eating a whole food diet, you probably need to like supplement with sodium. Like that's why LMNT is really big. I use LMNT because oftentimes I need more sodium.
Yeah.
Moving on to strength, you can look at grip strength over the years and it's been declining. So people are actually getting weaker. So if a country is only as strong as its citizens, this is like probably the most direct example of Americans actually getting
very
weaker.
literal. Yeah. Very literal.
And grip strength is actually a really good predictor of like all-cause mortality. So it's really important to be strong, especially as you age. And if your grip strength is going down, it probably means you have less muscle mass, or you're less able to recruit muscles through your nervous system. And that means you're at a greater likelihood of falling, which as you get old becomes really dangerous, right? So as you get older, you want to be strong, and even our younger people are less strong. You've seen the meme, "You got soft hands." That's Americans right now.
Yeah.
A lot of soft-handed people. So
Yeah, I've seen that both its grip strength and quad strength are highly correlated with longevity.
yeah,
And now that people mostly have office jobs and aren't really working with their hands much, I would think that's why grip strength has gone down so much.
yeah.
I do in the gym. One of my favorite exercises I've been doing for the past couple of years is farmer's carries.
Yep.
And that greatly improves your grip strength because I use straps when I deadlift and do a lot of back exercises. I don't always use them, but I use them a lot. So to kind of keep my grip strength up, I do farmer's carries at the end of my back and leg day.
Yeah, farmer carries might be like one of my favorite exercises, especially if you've got the handles that you can put the plates on both sides instead of like dumbbells. Because if you're just trying to use dumbbells, you wind up kind of maxing out, usually around 100, depending on the gym.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I've been using dumbbells. Big Work does have one of those other things where you can load it up, but it's just a lot easier for me to grab dumbbells and walk with them.
The next stat I've got here is the obesity rate. You know, the obesity rate in America is like 42%. So, I mean, if half of our country is like medically obese and is at a much higher risk of all these chronic diseases that we've talked about, or actually, is that episode coming out after? Yeah. In a future episode that's about to come out, we talk about the state of the medical system and how much Americans spend on healthcare. And we go into how obesity affects that and how it affects chronic disease. So definitely watch out for that episode if that's something you're interested in. But the obesity rate being so high right now, like that just at 42%, that means almost 1 out of every 2 people is obese. Yeah. Like that doesn't put us in a very good situation. And I mean, that has direct effects on the strength literally of our country, because right now, like the Army has a hard time recruiting people because it's hard to find people that meet the basic height, weight, or education standards.
Yeah. And then also, wait, do you know what percent of the population can be recruited for the Army? Because I know there's a certain IQ you got to meet. And then now with the obesity rate where it is.
Yeah. Like the standards aren't crazy, right? I mean, they've also changed it to allow more people to qualify. So I think they got rid of being a high school graduate being a qualification. Not 100% sure. But last I checked, there was a general that like wrote a letter to the American public, and I think he said that only that 77% of young Americans don't qualify right now. So
that throws out everybody who's old too. So it's 77% of the people that they could recruit from.
Yeah. Yeah, so that only leaves like 23% of young Americans to actually be eligible for military service right now.
Yeah. And
so, I mean, that has a huge impact on the strength of a nation, right?
Yeah. And, you know, that 23% is probably comprised of smarter people who are in good shape and might realize that the Army is probably not the best full-time career path. I mean, it can be like the retirement's great, pension's great, that kind of stuff. You learn a lot of good skills there, lots of leadership. But at least the starting pay isn't good to what you can get out of college.
Yeah, it just depends on like what experience and education level you have, right? Like it's probably not the best fit for everyone, but it's a good fit for some people. So
what I've heard is if you have absolutely no idea what you want to do with your life after high school, the Army is a great opportunity just because of the skills you learn.
Yeah, I could see that.
So,
and then I guess the last thing I would wrap up with is people don't seem to be very disciplined nowadays. I think you can see this in how people take care of their bodies. I think you can see it in how people take care of their personal finances too. Like you were talking about with the average American carrying so much personal consumer debt, right? So I think people just don't seem to be very disciplined, and the average American spends a crazy amount of time on social media and television every week. I forget the exact number, but I think it's like over 2 hours on TV a day.
It's the 33 hours a week.
33 hours a week. Is that TV and social media combined?
The statistic I saw was just TV.
No way.
So yeah, it's high.
Yeah. I mean, but like just think about people just not having the discipline to not watch TV the entire time they're home after work.
Yeah.
Like you could be doing so many other things with all your time. And it like, I mean, one day coming home from work, spending a couple hours binging a show with like a friend or a roommate or a family member doesn't seem like it would make that much of a difference. But if you're doing that like every day, there's so much else you could be doing.
Yeah. I mean, 33 hours is the second full-time job.
Yeah.
You are spending an entire work week watching TV if you're doing 33 hours.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I can't even fathom where you'd find the time for that.
Yeah. And I would think you'd run out of shows too. Netflix only has so many good shows.
That's why people watch stuff like The Bachelor.
Yes. Yes.
Garbage TV.
Or on YouTube. There's a bunch of YouTubers now, and the stuff that my sisters watch is mostly on YouTube. And it's like kids around their age doing like a documentary of just their life and doing weird stuff. I don't get it, but
it's the people in the gym that record their entire workout.
Yes.
And it's like, dude, no one wants to watch your vlog of your whole workout.
Yeah. Yeah. Which hopefully this is more entertaining than a gym vlog.
All right, guys. Thanks for sticking with us through these camera issues we've been having during these episodes. We are working on getting new cameras so that we don't have all these cuts as we get up to fix the cameras.
Yeah. So now we got our raffle and our book club.
Yes, I forgot.
So the raffle winner is my sister Julia. She has been a trooper trying to help us get somebody to do our editing. She was hanging up flyers. She goes to college, Charleston, hanging up flyers there on every corkboard she found. She was hanging them up on King Street, which is like the main street in Charleston. So thank you, Julia. And if we don't find anybody, we will probably get some more viewers.
It might seem like nepotism, but she just had a lot of raffle entries from hanging up a bunch of flyers.
Yes, she got one per flyer hung, and she's at 10. So,
should we move on to the book club?
Yes, we shall.
All right. Why don't you go first, Nick?
All right. I'll start with my book, and then I'll do my podcast.
All right.
So this is the Defining Decade: Why Your 20s Matter. A lot of people will waste their 20s, and I really think your 20s will define the rest of your life. They don't have to, but we talk about time value of money. This is time value of time. the earlier that you start doing something, the better, and it will have a compounding effect. So if it's getting your career set off on the right foot, getting really good at your job, learning outside of work, you'll really set yourself up for a nice 30s and 40s where you won't have to work as hard. You'll feel good at your job and you'll be comfortable with your income.
Yeah, especially considering most people nowadays are like starting their families in their 30s. If you can put in more work in your 20s, you might have more time to spend like raising your kids in your 30s and your 40s.
Right. Yeah. And was that what Chris or Saeed said to us? They wish they did.
Yeah.
Was it? I think Saeed said that he wished he powered through law school while he still had the time.
Yeah.
And they were kind of saying just that we should just learn as much as possible before we have a family. Because, I mean, I'm working a full-time job and doing this, but that's nothing really compared to doing this, working a full-time job and raising a family. Yeah.
All right, my book.
Should I do my podcast or do you want to do your book?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, so we have Glenn, so this is another Russ Roberts podcast. This is an oldie but a goodie. This came out in 2020, and it's Glenn Laurie on race, education, and America. And what I like about this podcast is they take very controversial topics and talk about them in a very logical, non-emotional way that I think will help solve problems instead of the yelling that we usually see.
Yeah.
So they talk about the education system, a lot about the education system in that one and why it's gone downhill, and try to figure out how to solve it.
The weights book of the month is The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. So this book may not seem like a weights book, but it talks about basically how when you start installing habits into your life, they wind up compounding into a lot of results long term. So it goes through not only like lifting and your health, but it goes into your personal finances with compounding interest. And it talks a lot about building habits. I actually liked it better than Atomic Habits, which is a book that a lot of people rave about for like building good habits. I thought The Compound Effect was even better than that in terms of how and why it's important to build good habits. So I would definitely recommend The Compound Effect. It's one of my favorite books to give people.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we'll see you in a couple days. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for joining us today at Weights and Wealth. And don't forget to apply today's lessons to live healthy and wealthy.
If this conversation will contribute to your fitness and financial gains, please share it with a friend or family member and give a 5-star review so more people can lift bigger weights and get bigger bank accounts.